Tune into Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
This society needs a spectacle. It might help us to see some people.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 20th of June 2020, we look at justice, 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 with the view being that it is necessary for Vincentians to galvanise and intensify the call for justice in all of its forms, including social justice, on behalf of all Vincentians. The Collins Dictionary defines justice as fairness in the way people are treated, and the Oxford Dictionary states that justice is the quality of being fair and reasonable. Those definitions tell us that justice is to treat people fairly. Not some people, but people, meaning all people. The definitions tell us that justice is the quality of being fair to all, and justice is the quality of reasonableness, or being reasonable to all. Once emblazoned on the flag of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, right up until the flag was replaced in 1985, was the Latin phrase pax et justitia. The phrase means peace and justice. That phrase, though no longer on the flag of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, continues to represent the motto of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The motto which is meant to embed in the minds of all Vincentians that all Vincentians deserve to live in peace and that all Vincentians need to have justice. In other words, all Vincentians need to be treated reasonably and fairly. Peace and justice go hand in hand with each other. And that is why, more often than not, during a protest, it is often said, no justice, no peace. Over the life of the regime in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and more so within recent times, the complaint has been getting more frequent that too many Vincentians are being treated unfairly and unreasonably. In short, many Vincentians are treated unjustly. There is no justice for them. That continuing unjust treatment has led to the clamor for all Vincentians to experience justice. And the cries of no justice, no peace are beginning to be heard, even though some of those cries are heard in whispers and anonymity. It is with the motto of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, peace and justice for all, in mind, that we, on A View from the Outside, support the call for justice, peace and justice for all Vincentians. All Vincentians need to have peace of mind and live in peace. All Vincentians deserve justice. We, on A View from the Outside, recognize the struggle for justice is real for many in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And because the struggle is real, it must not be ignored. Those in the leadership of the country must not be allowed to ignore or get away with ignoring justice. This is a call for every Vincentian of conscience to make. No conscionable Vincentian can afford to sit idly by and watch and hear other Vincentians cry out for justice and not join in that cry. When some do not get justice, It should disturb and disrupt the peace of mind of others. So much so that the phrase, no justice, no peace, is activated within them. When some do not get justice, their cries must be echoed and repeated as often as possible and as necessary as possible. Those responsible for dispensing justice must not be allowed to rest until they fulfill their duty to dispense that justice. If they do not or cannot dispense that justice, then they must be made to pay the consequences. The examples of justice not being dispensed fairly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are numerous, perhaps too numerous to mention. But be that as it may, we will highlight some of them here, and then we will leave you to continue the conversation. The cries of Bigger Biggs for justice continue unabated. His cries and the call for justice on his behalf cannot be repeated often enough. He deserves justice. For almost a decade now, his multi-million-dollar business was destroyed and left in ruins, all because it is said that he is not a supporter of the regime. He remains without compensation. He deserves justice, and we all, as Vincentians, need to join him in the call for justice. The cries of Yogi Farrell are ringing out near and far. Where is the justice for her? Where is the justice for that poor young Vincentian woman whose future as an aspiring model was destroyed by the regime, its agents, enablers, and the state machinery? No Vincentian, particularly no Vincentian parent, and especially no Vincentian mother with any conscience, can sit comfortably and not join the call for justice for Yogi Farrell. Think of the circumstances under which Yogi Farrell was destroyed, and just bear in mind that she, Yogi Farrell, could have been your own daughter. She deserves justice, and we all, as Vincentians, must demand justice on her behalf. Those who destroyed her must not be allowed to get away with it. They too must face justice. The cries of Michelle Andrews have gone unheeded for years. It is about time that she gets justice. She deserves justice. Where is the justice for the family of Glenn Jackson? They need the perpetrator or perpetrators of his murder to be brought to justice. They deserve justice. The cries of Marcus de Freitas and those of the late Randolph Toussaint, who is now crying out from his grave, are heard loud and clear. They need to be paid for their property, which the regime compulsorily acquired, and for which the court ordered them to be paid. They deserve justice. The cries of those who remain unpaid for their land at Argyle are being heard. The regime dispossessed them of their land for the construction of the Argyle International Airport, and many of them are yet to receive payment for their land. They deserve justice. The cries of those who have been victimized by the regime purely because they do not support them or they're perceived not to support them have been bellowing out through the years. The cries of watchmen and lowly paid workers who have been victimized by the regime are being heard. Manny Macmillan of Fireburn in Park Hill being just one of them. There are many more throughout the country. Those people, they deserve justice. The cries of teachers who have been victimized, particularly by transferring them and not promoting them, are heard. They deserve justice. The cries of policemen and women who have been victimized, particularly by transferring them and or not promoting them, are also heard. They too deserve justice. Those who are talked down to and disrespected by their superiors also deserve justice. The cries of public servants who are inexplicably overlooked for promotion. They deserve justice. Their cries are heard. The cries of contractors, including Bali and others, who are unjustifiably not awarded contracts because they are perceived not to be supporting the regime, are heard. They too deserve justice. All of those who have been arbitrarily arrested by the police, including Paul Imad Scruggs, Josette Bowen, and Kenson King, and others, cry out for justice. They deserve justice. The cries of the ordinary person in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who are perceived not to support the regime, are loud and clear. Their cry is for justice because they believe that justice has two faces in the country. In fact, the most recent past Speaker of the House of Assembly, a lawyer by profession, a former candidate for the regime during the last elections, stated that justice in St. Vincent has two faces. One face for the well-connected and those in the upper echelons of the regime, and the other face for the poor and downtrodden and those who are not perceived to support the regime. They all deserve justice. Where is the justice for Ben Exeter when he was arrested and had his licensed firearm, which was holstered, taken away from him? Does he not deserve justice, especially when he sees that no action was taken against a candidate for the regime who was accused of wantonly and dangerously discharging his firearm in public? That is a typical example of justice having two faces in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a nation deserves justice. When the opposition was precluded from bringing a motion of no confidence against the regime in the House of Parliament, that remains one of the gravest injustices in any constitutional democracy. The people of the country deserve justice. They do deserve justice by having the election petitions decided. The longer those election petitions remain in the court, the more glaring the injustice seems. Those petitions were raised soon after the last elections of December 2015. Those elections are to determine the very legitimacy of the government. Clearly, justice is in short supply in the country, and the people are crying out for justice. In the wake of the killing of George Floyd, a black man at the knee of a white police officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the USA, the voice of the Black Lives Matter movement has gained momentum throughout the USA and around the world. Most blacks and some of their white counterparts all over the world are demanding justice, not only in respect of the killing of black people at the hands of police, but also justice in all of its forms. There are some politicians, including some in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who want to use George Floyd's killing as a prop to try to gain recognition that they stand for justice and support social justice. They must not be allowed to do so. They must not be allowed to do so, especially when they are seen by many as oppressors of their own people. They must not be allowed to do so, especially when they are accused of using lawsuits and threats of lawsuits in their attempt to try to muzzle and intimidate people as they try to silence the nation. Everyone deserves justice and fair play, and they must not be allowed to do so. They must be told what the Reverend Al Sharpton told the world when he delivered the eulogy at George Floyd's memorial service. He said, "Take your knee off our neck." They must be told that Vincentians cannot breathe. They must be told that Vincentians deserve justice. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the regime metes out so many injustices. Those already mentioned and more to the Vincentian people that they must constantly be told that their knee is on our necks and that they must take their knee off our necks. The head of the regime must be told repeatedly to take his knee off the neck of Vincentians. It is not good enough for agents and enablers of the regime to take to the airwaves in a macabre way to try to convince Vincentians that the knee on the neck of Vincentians is pleasurable. No, Vincentians can't breathe, and those who have their knee on the necks of Vincentians must be told that Vincentians can't breathe. They must be told that Vincentians deserve justice. And now, as we have said above, we leave you to carry on the conversation. As you do so, we encourage you to identify and highlight instances when Vincentians have been robbed of and denied justice, including the lack of accountability, the promise of investigations which never materialize, and the refusal to publish the report of the latest country poverty assessment. And as you do so, as you continue the conversation, do your bit to ensure that you speak up and speak out for justice for all in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In doing so, always remember the motto of the country, Pax et Justitia, peace and justice. Remember also the often used phrase, no justice, no peace. And as you do all of that, bear in mind the words of the late civil rights activist Malcolm X, who said, I am for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I repeat that. I am for justice, no matter who it is for or against. Vincentians, the call is for justice. The call is for you, for us all, to stand up for justice for everyone. Until next week, Randy and all of the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with A View from the Outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. We also invite you to visit and like our Facebook page at A View from the Outside. And we also encourage you to visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel at JMB Horne. Everyone, Randy, you and all the listeners, have a pleasant Saturday. Have a wonderful Sunday tomorrow, and happy Father's Day to those fathers. And have a productive week ahead with everyone standing up for justice on behalf of Vincentians. All the best to you, Randy, and the listeners.